Hello everyone, my name is Tia Jones. Tonight I will be presenting Chapter 8 of Content Area Reading, Literacy and Learning Across the Curriculum. The chapter focuses on developing vocabulary and concepts. Attached, I have put a link to the Google Doc in more detail of the activity that I would have done if we were presented the activity in class. I've also attached a handout I would have passed out to everyone. The handout is basically a fill in the blank of some of the very important concepts that we will talk about throughout this PowerPoint. It is not all the concepts, but just some of the ones that I think are very important and that people will probably want to look back at for future reference. So if we would have done the first activity, which would be the one where you actually define a word, I would have had different construction paper to cut out into different note cards, and I would present the list that's coming up on the next page and ask each person to pick one word from the list. I would have asked you to write the word on one side of the paper and define it on the next side of the paper. So let's get to that list so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, so this is the list that I was mentioned in the previous slide. I picked these set of vocabulary words because the book Animal Farm, where they came from, it crosses different contents. It's also a book that deals with literature because it's a book, but it's also a very social study book that deals with socialism and democracy and things like that. So I thought this would be a very good book to use as an example for today's presentation. So I would ask you to pick a word from the list above. And so let's say if I would have picked rubbish. So I would have picked up a brown sheet of construction paper, and on the front of the card, I would have wrote the word rubbish. On the back of the card, I would have flipped it over and divided into 4 different categories. The top left category, I would have left blank for me to go back and to actually research the word, or simply in the classroom, we'll pull out our phones and look it up. If you're in an actual classroom, you might have actual dictionaries or Chromebooks for your students to go look it up. That one is where you put the actual definition. On the bottom left, I would have wrote my definition for the word. So when I think of rubbish, I would have simply just wrote the word trash because I think of trash when I think of rubbish. In the top right, I would have wrote a sentence using the word rubbish. So for example, I would have said, today I threw away a lot of rubbish for the garbage men to pick up on the following Monday. So on the following Tuesday, I'm sorry, I'm recording this on a Sunday. And so that would have been my sentence for the word. Then in the bottom right, I would have drew a picture. So I probably would have drew a trash can and some trash hanging around, just so I can identify that word rubbish. So you have made 5 different contexts with that word. You have associated to a feeling or a color, which would be the brown construction paper. You know, you think of trash, you think of dirty, dirt, the color brown. I would have had to look up the actual definition. I would have had to write my own definition. I would have wrote a sentence and drew a picture. That way I have these 5 different connections to the word to help me understand its definition. So if we would have did this in the classroom, of course, each person would have picked the word to define. And what we would have done was we would have compared and contrasted the definition you came up with to the actual dictionary definition. Now, like I said, I probably wouldn't have asked you to pull out your phone and look up the actual definition due to me giving to you in the next slide. We would have just simply compared and contrast the actual definition and the definition that you had. Something that's important to notice is that I also put the part of speech for every single word, because if you know the part of speech of the word, you can go back and make sure you use the correct part of speech when you wrote your sentence to make sure you fully understand the definition of words. So it's important to also know the part of speech of words as you're defining them. So back to my example of the word rubbish. Rubbish means worthless, unwanted material that is rejected or thrown out, litter, trash. So I basically said trash. So I would have had that right. However, it would have been important for me to add the other parts of the definition that is worthless, of unwanted material, because just because something might be rubbish to me, it might not be rubbish to someone else. It might seem worthless to me, but for someone else, it could be a gold mine. So it's important for me to know that it's that and not just simply an empty bottle of water or something like that. I also wrote the noun. So like I said, we would have did this in class. We would have had a class discussion comparing and contrasting the actual definition that you wrote in the literal definition found in the dictionary. After this presentation, you will be able to discuss the relationship among experiences, concepts, and words. Explain how teachers can help students see the relationship in words and by connecting power knowledge to new content. Implement strategies that can support students in refining their knowledge of discipline-specific vocabulary. Explain how knowledge of word structure can enhance students' understanding of words' meaning. So if you think about this activity that we just did with the note card, you will see that we did the first 2 bullet points in extreme detail. I started out by just presenting the word to you, opening it up, and you had to imagine picking out one of the colored note cards. So I used rubbish as my example, and for rubbish, I said that I picked a brown note card. So I had to make that personal experience of being around trash or being around rubbish, that it's dirty, it's unkept, it's like a brownish dirt type color. Some trash, when you think about it. I had to make the connection of the word and put it into a sentence and give my own definition and draw a picture. I then made that connection between my prior knowledge to the new content by adding the actual definition, comparing, contrasting the definition that I had for the word in the textbook or the actual definition of the word. So I will refer back to our activity a lot throughout the PowerPoint just because a lot of the stuff that we did are brought up in different concepts and methods and strategies that you can learn to further students' knowledge of vocabulary because you're making those connections between prior knowledge or experiences and trying to connect them to the new content that you're teaching. Why is it important to study vocabulary? There's a strong connection between vocabulary and reading comprehension. The more students understand words they read in text, the more they understand the meaning of the text. Teaching words to students help them make connections between prior knowledge and new vocabulary they encounter in text. So if you look at your textbook when you open up this chapter, chapter 8, you will see this diagram is presented for each chapter and basically developing vocabulary and concepts deal with concepts, word, that prior knowledge to the new content, vocabulary building, reinforcing and extending vocabulary knowledge. We will talk about a lot of different graphic organizers and basically experiences, whether it's their prior personal experiences or the experiences they have with the word in the classroom. And those are things that we would dive into to make sure that you're teaching vocabulary in your classroom in an effective way. Let's see how vocabulary really impact our understanding. So I'm going to say some words to you. Naturalism, anarchy, biology, zoology. Were you able to know which content each group of words went to? I hope so. So when I said naturalism, anarchy, you thought of civics or history, social studies, biology, zoology. You thought of science. So it's important that we learn these vocabulary words while we're going through school so that when we get up older, if we read something in headline and say how coronavirus affects the human biology, how it affects the nation on isolation to other countries, we kind of have a background meaning of what these words means in order to understand the text that we are about to read. So knowing these words, you learn more than just what they mean. You're able to associate them with the content that they belong to. Okay, so by now we have all done plenty of different lesson plans. And we always ask, why do we have to do this tier vocabulary? So this is the purpose for the tier vocabulary broke down into their meaning and their importance. So you have what we refer to as tier 1 or the general vocabulary. It consists of everyday words with a widely acknowledged meaning and common use. So I'm a history person, so all my examples, I'm sorry, I try to add English and social through there, but for this one, I just focus on social studies or history and government. So a general vocabulary that I even just said is government. You throw the word government around all the time. It's an everyday used word, okay? So that would be for the general vocabulary of Tier 1. Tier 2 is the special vocabulary. It's made up of words from everyday life, general vocabulary that have meaning to the content. So this kind of go back, like I said, I'll be referring to that a lot, the previous slide. So throughout your life, you kind of hear populism and social studies and senators and senate and different words like that. So that's the vocabulary that when you hear, you think of nothing but social studies, or you think of civics, you think of the histories, humanities. And so that's my special vocabulary. That's in my tier 2. So then tier 3 is my technical vocabulary. Technical vocabulary consists of words that have usage and application only in a particular subject field matter. Good technical vocabulary terms will be pronouns. So in this example, I use Huey P. Long. Huey P. Long is a person. He's something that would be special just for that content in which I'm teaching. So this is a visual of the previous slide. This is a picture showing how the 3 tiers work. The very basic is your bottom, your foundation of your triangle. Then the very top is your technical, content-driven words. So you have a bunch of words that your students use in everyday language, and it might be hard for you to find those technical words just for your content, but those words are important to make sure students understand. So it's a triangle. It works up in 3 different stages, and I really hope this diagram helps you see. Experiences, concepts, and words. Concepts are learned by acting on and interacting with the environment. The best way to do this is to learn through direct, concrete, and purpose experiences. The best way to comprehend new words are through different strategies that encourage collaborative, text-based discussion with teacher and peers. For example, with our activity, we discussed how you personally define the word through different strategies. Then we talked about the actual definition and how it related to what you previously thought. So the we and you all can be what I talked about, what I previously discussed. And again, it goes back to my example of the word rubbish. We made those personal connections, then we turn back around and make those concrete connections. So I have experienced the word before because I've read Animal Farm, but even if I haven't read the book, I probably would have known that rubbish would have meant trash. I would have thought probably would have meant something dealing with rubber just because of the rub part of it, make those connections, and I would further be able to understand my meaning of the word through different activities and discussions that we would have had in the classroom. But because I did read Animal Farm and I had that word, I was able to look at that word many years later, make that connection, be able to draw pictures and explain it. And if I would have had it wrong, I would learn from my mistakes during the class discussion. What are concepts? Concepts are mental images that represent things that can be grouped together by common features or similar criteria. Objects, symbols, ideas, process, or events. Concepts hardly stand alone. Instead, they are bound by a hierarchy of relationship. We use concepts to reduce the complexity of our environment and the necessity for constant learning. For example, again, in our activity, you had to draw the mental image that came to mind when you saw the vocabulary word. So I've been using the word rubbish throughout. So let's switch out. Let's use the word freedom. So for the word freedom, I probably would have drawn the American flag or even chains being broken to represent someone free. So it's that mental image, that concept that you have, that object or symbol or ideals you relate that word to. Conceptual relationships. An example. We organize all of our experiences and knowledge into conceptual hierarchies according to class, example, and attributes. We organize class into 2 separate groups. Superordinate, the next big idea or term when dealing with a topic, or subordinate, the item that identifies or make up the superordinate categories. So, for example, if our main topic or class was memory, our superordinate would be stage of memory, and our subordinate would be short-term memory. For every concept, there are examples. Examples are the members of any concept being considered. This helps students identify the relevant attributes of the subordinate class. The attributes is the variable that could be shared by all or just one. So back to our example from the previous slide. If you have class memory, superordinate stage of memory, subordinate short term, an example of short term would be working memory. Using graphic organizers to make connections among key concepts. Graphic organizers are diagrams that use content vocabulary to help students anticipate concepts in their relationships to one another in the reading material. You have different types of graphic organizers to depict the definition of words. Your note card, for example, is divided into 4-part organizers to show the different connections of a word. The note card that I refer to is the ongoing examples that I have been having throughout from the activity. The note card you had divided into 4 different sections and describe, the actual definition, your personal definition, write a picture and draw a picture and write a sentence. So that would be a type of graphic organizer. Alright. A common organizer for vocabulary is the Necker tree. They use the hierarchy in order to show relationships between different words. For concepts dealing with time or linear order, timelines are a good way to organize information. Graphic organizer walkthrough. First, analyze the vocabulary and make a list of the important words you want to define. Secondly, arrange the list of words. Choose the word that represents the most inclusive word or the main topic of discussion for the chapter. Third, add the scheme of vocabulary that can be used to define the word and or could be used as examples of the word. Fourth, evaluate the organizer. Check it as a class or look the words up and make sure they are placed in the correct order. Fifth, introduce the students to the learning task. As you present the vocabulary relationship, show how they connect to one another. Create as much discussion as possible. This will draw students' understanding of the experience with the concepts. Lastly, as you complete the learning task, relate new information to the organizer. This step is used as a review and study step in order to reinforce understanding of the different concepts. Make sure to tell students to keep organizers in order for class discussion, review, and a study guide before tests. These steps might seem like a lot, but honestly, it is not. Now let's look at this list in a graphic organizer with the list we made in the previous slides. Remember, our main topics of discussion was memory, stage of memory, short term, and working memory. On this slide, the previous topics discussed in previous slides are underlined in the yellow ink to bring your attention to. Your complete graphic organizer, of course, will have more than just 4 simple topics. However, in order to make the PowerPoint shorter, those are the 4 different steps that I focus on. As you see in this graphic organizer, you can have different superordinate topics and a lot of different subordinate topics and different examples to help make connections among words and their vocabulary. Remember, these activities that I will be discussing deals with whole unit terms or chapter terms. So this probably is just from one little section that you'll focus on stage memory, short term, and working memory. Graphic organizers. When used correctly, graphic organizers can be powerful tools to help all students achieve high testing scores because they will have learned words fully. These are the steps to ensure you are helping improve students' understanding by using graphic organizers. First, be consistent when implementing graphic organizers. Students like routine and structure. For example, have a graphic organizer for opening or closing each unit. If you choose to have it as an opener, always have one for an opener. If you can have students keep track of them by placing them in a certain binder or inactive notebook, it will also help. Use graphic organizers to coherently depict relationships between concepts. To construct coherent graphic organizers, use clear labels to connect concepts and limit the number of ideas presented. Seek different ways to integrate graphic organizers across content areas and throughout different stages of lesson or unit of study. Try to motivate other teachers to use the organizer and be consistent in your own classroom, thus making students accustomed to them. Show our students how to make their own connections. Write keywords on the board or type keywords and give each student a copy. Make sure terms of what you want students to learn and terms that students already know. When first teaching, have students form small groups or partners. After doing it for a while, I will have students make organizers on their own and check with a small group or partner. Give out note cards for students to fill out with given words and definitions or just the word. They will make the note card to form an organizer. You can also give out a blank template of a graphic organizer for students to fill out. As students work, provide assistance as needed. Initiate a discussion to check over organizers as a class. This is easier if you already have the completed organizer as an answer key. Activate what students already know about words. Word exploring. This is a writing to learn strategy. Students are given the new words and have to free write with them for 5 minutes. They are not told the definition of the word beforehand. They will have to use prior knowledge to write without worrying about spelling or grammar. This activity jogs long-term memory, allowing students to dig deep into their recess of their minds to gather thoughts about the topic. The teacher asks students to read thoughts out loud for the class. This should lead into a class discussion about the topic. Teachers can then explain the meaning of the topic, and the class can compare and contrast the different initial thoughts to the actual definition or meaning of the words. Brainstorming. Students access their prior knowledge in relationship to the target concept. This involves 2 simple steps that can be adapted easily into objectives. The teacher identified key concepts that reflect of the main topic of the lesson. Students work alone in peers or small groups to generate a list of vocabulary. List group label. This activity involves brainstorming as the first step. The second step is to have students form learning teams to group words into logical arrangements. Then label each arranged group of words. Next, have students make a guess about the topic of the lesson. After having a class discussion, then ask students to take the words and make paragraphs or sentences. This part of the activity can be a normal writing assignment or a free writing assignment. This example is like the list of words we identified earlier in slide 7, then label and discuss. So let's use the example of the words we had like biology, archaeology. Those words, when you make them in a list, you know that you're dealing with something with science. So then you ask students to write something dealing with biology. Something that I always remember about learning about biology is mitosis and meiosis. So they might have those words, mitosis and meiosis, also as vocabulary terms. And then you will have them to free write a paragraph or a sentence dealing with mitosis or meiosis. Word sorts. Require students to classify words into categories based on prior knowledge. The teacher identifies the key terms and asks students to sort them into logical arrangements of 2 or more. For example, teachers will identify vocabulary that go with stage of memory and process memory, then have students to try to sort them without students knowing which words go where. It is 2 ways to do this type of organizing. A closed sort. The teacher would tell the students the 2 categories that they would have to separate the words into. The teacher would not identify the words that go in each group, but just give them the main topic. Then you have the open sort. Students do not know in advance the main categories, meaning they might not know it's just 2 main groups and make 3 or more groups. This method is done before or after reading assignments. Before reading, it is helping students make predictions on what they are about to read. After reading, this method could be used to reinforce and clarify understanding of connections between concepts. Knowledge rating. This assignment is done best before reading a text because it makes readers analyze what they know about a topic. The vocabulary can be presented in a survey format. When students complete the survey, the teacher needs to lead a class discussion to determine what the student knows. This is an example of knowledge rating. You see I have the list of words on the left side of the page. At the very top, I have simple key things that you can ask the students for each word. I can define and use it. I have heard it or read it. I do not know this word. They go through the list of words and just put an X or a check mark next to each column that they can identify the word. So for a word like valid, I can define and use that word. Credible, I heard of it, read it, but I really can't identify it. This to help teachers determine what the student already know and what they do not know. Defining words in the context of their use. Teachers must also think of strategies that permit text learners to define words in relation to the context in which they are used. By helping students learn how to recognize when they do not understand a concept and know how they may apply different strategies to aid in their learning of understanding seemingly unfamiliar terms. The strategies we will explore is called the Vocabulary Self-Collection Strategies, also known as VSS, Concepts of Definition, CD, and Problem-Solving Circles. Vocabulary Self-Collection Strategy, VSS. This strategy promotes the long-term habit of language in an academic discipline because they learn how to make decisions related to the importance of the concept and how to use context in determining meaning. VSS helps students at all levels of ability to define and understand terms. This strategy is student-centered and gives students the choice in the classroom. VSS can work in 3 different ways. Students nominate a word they want to learn. Teachers nominate words they want students to learn, or both of the above ways to determine what words will be defined for the unit. VSS steps. Divide the class into nominated teams of 2 to 5. Each team pick word or words to emphasize in the reading material. Each team presents their word to the entire class. In order to keep structure in each group, it is good to assign a spokesperson to present the words to the class. As the teacher, you should ask the groups the following question. Where is the word found in the text? What does the team think of the word? Why did they choose the word? Why do the team think the class should learn the word? Students then define words and share with the class. They can do this before or while reading the text. Concepts of definition word maps. Concepts of definition word maps provide a framework for organizing conceptual information in the process of defining words. Conceptual information can be organized in terms of 3 types of relationships. The general class or category in which the concept belongs, the attributes or properties of the concept and those that distinguish it from the other members of the category, and examples and or illustrations of the concept. CD word maps continue. CD word maps work best with nouns but can be used with some verbs. This activity works best when students are given a template and asked to make the connections after a reading assignment. This method helps students define unknown words in terms of category, property, and examples of relationships. CD word maps help students relate the term with things they can relate to when they are making examples for the term. For example, think about the note card activity. You had to draw a picture and write your own definition for the word, making it personal for you. An example that you have experienced or will understand that connection to the word. CD word map steps and examples. In the center of the CD, students write the concept being studied. In this example, it is tiger. Working outwards, they then write the word that best describes the general class. So in this example, the second step, what is it? The answer is feline. Then answer the question, what is like? The general class. So the third step in this example is fierce, wild. Fourth, ask students to provide at least 3 examples or illustrations to describe the word. Tannish yellow with black stripes was the example given for the 4th step. Reinforcing and extending vocabulary knowledge and concepts. The most successful strategies help students understand the new vocabulary as it relates to the overall comprehension. Teachers should use strategies that provide students with varied approaches to learning, using, and retaining new concepts while they are comprehending overall. Students need experiences to develop word meaning and concepts. Teachers need to use different assessments to make sure students are capitalizing on reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Semantic Features Analysis, SFA. SFA establishes a meaningful link between students' prior knowledge and words that are conceptually related to one another. This strategy requires teachers to develop a chart or grid to help students analyze similarities and differences among the related concepts. Teachers select a topic and write the related words across the top of the grid, and the features and properties shared by some of the words in the column are listed down the left side of the grid. Students and teachers should revisit the chart throughout the lesson or chapter to discuss any changes of thought. This method is suited for before reading to expose students to the term, then after reading to reinforce the meaning of words. This is like a high form of rating knowledge example because students are now rating terms to their meaning. This is an example of the SFA. So as you see on the left side, we have the words listed that we want students to be able to interpret it. And then on the top, we have their definitions or meaning. And you can write a Y or N for each one across, or you can just put X marks. It depends on how you want students to be able to do it. If you just want them to identify the ones that go directly with the word, you can have them X, or you can have them answer each and every block across with a Y or N for yes or no. In the voice from the field, Ms. Tracy stated that after enhancing vocabulary instruction activity with the writing component while including the systematic features analysis, her students were able to create meaningful links among concepts and meanings in their relationships. Test scores improved to 90% or higher across the class with students with different learning levels. I think this occurred because students were exposed to the words before learning them, while learning them, and then again as a review with this method. Memorization activities. This method requires students to determine relations among technical terms, much as word sort. Students are given 4 to 6 words and asked to identify the different similarities or label the groups of words. This strategy demands that students perceive common attributes or examples in relation to a more inclusive concept into a superordinate or subordinate term. Concept circles. Concept circles is the most versatile method that can be applied to grade levels in content. It is as simple as putting words, pictures, or phrases in different sections of a circle and directing students to describe or name the concept relation among the sections. Another way to use concept circles in the class is for the teacher to have 1 or 2 sections open and direct the students to fill out the empty sections that connect to the term. Lastly, the note card we did earlier is an example of a concept circle. Not all concept circles have to be shaped as a circle. You divided your note card into 4 different sections and had 4 different ways in order to explain the word. And on the back of the note card, you have the actual word. Vocabulary triangles. Vocabulary triangles concepts are a visual tool for providing students with opportunities to consider the relationship among words, concepts, and apply those in meaningful ways. Teachers ask students to define the words placed at each corner of the triangle, then ask students to use the word in a sentence. Magic squares. It is a matching exercise of the words to the definition. However, what makes this method so unique is all the boxes have to add up to the same number in rows and columns to know that they are matched correctly. This method might seem like it takes a lot of time, but it actually does not. In the textbook on page 230, figure 8.20, it shows the numbers you can use, and all you have to do is just match the words up to the numbers correctly. Vocabulary building strategies. Showing students how to construct meaning for unfamiliar words encountered during reading helps students develop strategies needed to monitor comprehension and increase their own vocabulary. Teachers should show to students how to use context word structure in the dictionary to provide students with several basic strategies for vocabulary learning that will last a lifetime. Teachers should model these skills on the board for the students. 3 steps to teach students vocabulary building strategies. 1. Model how to make sense of a word in a context of its use. 2. Analyze the word structure. 3. Combine context and word structure. Using context to approximate meaning. Using context involves using information surrounding a difficult word to help reveal its meaning. Inference requires readers to see an explicit or implicit relationship between an unfamiliar word and its contents, or to what they know and what is unknown. Teachers need to have high expectations and know that students can make some, but not all connections to words and their meaning. The 3 kinds of information to help students are typographic, logographic clues, and syntactic and semantic skills. Typographic cues. Typographic or format clues make use of footnotes, italics, bold-face prints, parenthetic definitions, pictures, graphs, charts, and the like. These clues provide students a clear-cut connection and a direct reference to an unknown word. Students tend to gloss over these words, so it's important for teachers to bring attention to them. A good way to bring attention to typographic words is for teachers to use the reading out loud method and talk through ways to define words and why they're important. So, for example, if you're reading a text and you see the word rubbish, it's bolded, you want to bring definitions to what they were talking about around the word. So they might say, on Tuesday, the students threw away the rubbish to be picked up on Friday. So, throw away, pick up, what's something that's usually throw away and then it be picked up by someone else on a later date? Okay, trash. So that is a technique of a reading out loud method and trying to make connections about the words that's around the technical word or the word that you're trying to define. Logographic cues. Logographic cues are visual symbols that represents a word. When paired with vocabulary instruction, logographic cues can support students' understanding of vocabulary concepts. The visualization required in generating pictures or symbols helps students to understand and retain vocabulary concepts. An example of this is a picture you had to draw on your note card. By doing so, you made a personal connection to the word that will help you remember the word. You had to actually draw something that will make you think of that word, that visual symbol, that visual connection. Syntactic and semantic clues. They should not be treated separate but as one. The grammatical relationship among words in a sentence or the structure arrangement among sentences in a passage often help clarify the meaning of a particular word. Teach students how to look for the cue words in text by using the table to the right. So some words might be placed in a definition where it says the word is. Some might be linked where it says that the word is one thing and it has as another thing. Some words might be direct opposite of each other. Some might be just simple cause and effect of each other. You have to be able to look at the whole sentence to determine what the word means. Again, that's why it's important to know the parts of speech of words. Context-related activity. Readers who build and use contextual are able to recognize meaning in the way words are used. Modify closing passage. Closing passages can be created to reinforce technical vocabulary. Every nth word, for example, need not be deleted, just the key terms. The text should be 200 to 500 words max and be an important part of the text in order to make it meaningful. Depending on your objective, students can simply supply the missing words before or after reading. An example, a blank can grow if it has sunlight, blank, which we give them by breathing out in blank. A plant can grow if it has sunlight, carbon dioxide, which we give them by breathing out in water. Open. Open stands for opinion. It can also be a closing method. Open is a meaning-extending vocabulary strategy that provides another example of context-based reinforcement and extension. You can do this method by dividing the class into groups of 3, then distribute exercise sentences to each student in the group. Next, each group member must convince the other member in the group that his or her word choice is the best fit for the sentence. If no agreement is reached on the best word for each sentence, then each member is allowed to say the word they thought fit best. The only way to keep this activity in hand is to make sure students just do not say a random word, but can defend or justify their answer. This activity encourages open discussion and reinforces the role of prior knowledge and experience in the decision that each group makes. Word structure. Teaching students how to look for root words, prefix, and suffix when trying to learn the meaning of a word. The smallest unit of meaning in a word is called the morpheme. Analyzing a word structure is called the morphometric analysis. Students who have acquired large vocabularies tend to have a greater understanding of morphology, and build an understanding of morphology helps students to expand their vocabularies. Teaching students how to detect and define words when compound words made up of two known words joined together, words containing a recognizable stem has been added, words that can be analyzed into familiar and regular pronounced units, example, Latin or Greek rooted words that are common in our language, words that contain irregular pronounced units so that there is no sure pronunciation unless one consults a dictionary. Using a dictionary as a strategic resource. Context and word structure keeps readers on the right track so that they are able to follow a text without getting bogged down. A dictionary is a valuable resource for students to learn how to look up words that they do not know meaning. Teachers should not tell students to look up words in a dictionary as a way to get them away from them, but to teach them the valuable skills. In order for students to know that that was the reason, teachers need to tell students to report back to them what they find. Teachers need to teach students how to determine the best fit between a word and its definition in the context it is being used. That dictionaries are helpful tools by letting them choose selective terms that are helpful and not a full list that students could dread. And how to pronounce words. These methods will help you teach your students the vocabulary words that you need to teach them for your content while teaching them skills they will need to know for the future. If you have any comments or questions, please message me in Moodle. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope you stay safe and have a wonderful week.